There's a new chapter in U.S.-Cuba ties, and tonight we find out what this means for the Bahamas.
Today, U.S. President Barack Obama announced a new Cuba policy which relaxes restrictions and sanctions on that island nation. This no doubt paves the way for the embargo that has lasted some 54 years to be lifted. During a recent CARICOM meeting in Cuba, which was attended by the nation's chief, Caribbean leaders urged the United States to take that bold step. Our Clint Watson spoke with top government officials on what this could mean for the Bahamas.
It most likely will become the legacy of U.S. President Barack Obama when he demits office, removing a more than half-a-century embargo and beginning trade and diplomatic relations with Cuba. It's what the world has been waiting for, and repeated calls for CARICOM leaders at the recent CARICOM-Cuba summit in Havana 2 weeks ago echoed the same sentiments. Wednesday, President Obama announced the loosening of restrictions and the process to begin lifting the embargo. Prime Minister the Right Honorable Christie says no doubt this is good news, as our relationship with Cuba will only be strengthened. And while in his view there is nothing we should be threatened about, he did say the move should not be treated lightly.
It ought to be a serious concern for the Bahamas. Cuba has always been an extraordinary destination of interest to people who travel. And therefore the people of the world will have a particular interest in going to Cuba. And that's why, whilst we were there, in my speech to the Caribbean prime ministers and to the Cuban officials, including the Cuban government officials who were there, I spoke about multi-destination tourism. People who come to the Bahamas and would wish to go to Cuba, people who come to Cuba and would wish to come to the Bahamas, because we're so close to each other and because we have easy transportation between the two countries.
Tourism Minister Obi Wolscombe says the Bahamas has been preparing for this unprecedented move, and while he agrees it will take greater focus, he also believes it is a joint effort to ensure the Bahamas can sustain its tourism product.
We expect there to be the mystique factor. Millions would want to get to Cuba to see what's going on now. But in the ratings in the Caribbean right now, it's the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Jamaica, and the Bahamas. So Cuba's already in play now, and expect that to increase. We have to improve our product. I can't worry about the competition. I have to let the competition worry about me. And if we can get our people working together, doing the things we must do, improving our culture, providing the service that we must provide, and taking all that God has given us, I think Cuba will be watching us and would want to know what they can do to get to our level.
Meantime, former Prime Minister the Right Honorable Hubert Ingraham says this move, although supported by the Bahamas, should be cause for concern.
There's no question it'll have some implications for the Bahamas, and the Bahamas must now begin to give renewed focus to how it will compete in this expanded market for the American tourists. Hopefully, the Bahamas' share of the market will not be identical to the share of the market that Cuba will attract. But we now have 2 major resorts in the Bahamas that have to be filled, and so there are significant potential economic consequences arising from the United States decision this morning.
President Obama and Raul Castro have reportedly been in talks to come up with the agreement. The U.S. and Cuba are expected to both open embassies to begin to facilitate business, trade, and commerce, particularly banking. But no doubt the attention will be on travel, as the mystery of Cuba is top on many travelers' agenda.
We have to solve the issues in this country because we are going at being the best little country in the world, notwithstanding the fact that Cuba will emerge as a major power in the region.
Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.